Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisen, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And joining me from Poway, you in Poway this morning? In Poway, California, is my good friend and associate, David Corbin. David, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks. How you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing wonderful. And, we're, as I told you before, we're approaching close to 900 podcasts now. And I'm always thanking the listeners. I tell my authors it's a broken record, but without the people that come and make comments and do whatever, it's the lifeblood of what I do. So I always thank them before I start. Now, we had David on the show quite a while ago for his book Slaughter Brand, or Brand Slaughter. I reverse the words, and we'll put a link up to that. And David, for those of you who don't know, has worked in the area of branding and consulting business owners for quite some time. He has many books out. You're welcome to go to Amazon and check out some of those. And I would also say just go to davidcorbin.com. That's davidcorbin.com. And I'd encourage all of my listeners to watch the featured ink little videos that he's got up there. They're little 2-minute videos that are just really, really cool. But David, I'm going to let him know a little bit about you. Speaker, business advisor, president of private and public corporation, inventor, mentor, and he is really a good guy. He says he's a good guy. David has been referred to as the Robin Williams with an MBA because he's very practical, highly relevant content of the work that he does. He's worked for hundreds of companies. If you go to his website, you'll see he's a former psychotherapist with a background in healthcare. He served as management leadership consultant to business and organizations of all sizes, from Fortune 20 companies to businesses with less than 1 million. And he enjoys the challenge of all of this work. He also worked directly with the president of companies such as AT&T, Hallmark, Sprint, as well as the honorary secretary of the Veterans Administration and others. Again, go to davidcorbin.com. That's where you can learn more about David and what it is that he does. Speaking of AT&T and working with them, you talk about brand slaughter, and I know AT&T lately has been challenged, and I have them for my internet service. And this isn't a dig, but I'll tell you, it's been a challenge to get anything done they're gotten pretty big. So David, you give a ton of acknowledgments at the beginning of the book, a lot of gratitude and a lot of love to people that have come before you, been your mentors, taught you, everybody from Greg Reed to Brian Tracy, who used to work with. Let's kind of start the interview there. What did you gather in the way of knowledge, expertise, and wisdom by working with some of the greatest thought leaders of all time across the country? And how did that impact the writing of this particular book?
I got to tell you, Greg, that question alone is delicious, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. And not just because I've never been asked that question.
I'm sure you have.
No, I've not. I've literally not, in the way that you just asked that. And I mean that sincerely.
Okay.
I mean that sincerely. I've invented products as a result of what I've learned and how I've learned. In addition, I've invented products and built companies around things that I learned from while I was teaching and while I was mentoring others. I mean, I was Margaret Thatcher, and I got an award presented in part by Margaret Thatcher and Maya Angelou and Tom Peters and Secretary of State James Baker. And that invention came from a collaboration and a consultation I was doing with a client. And then my current invention, which just won the Healthcare Innovation International Healthcare Design Award, came from a collaboration with someone who I consulted with 25 years ago. And so the impact of, by, with, and for mentors is beyond, it's beyond words. So as you're building your business, we think we're building our business. No, our business is building us.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And business is, of course, always about relationships, relationships with others, and relationships with ourselves,
Hmm.
right? And learning about ourselves, our bandwidth, our skills, our areas of infinite potential, uh, and all. And so I was business partners with Brian Tracy for 5 years. Well, how could you be around such an enlightened being and not learn, even osmotically, let alone directly and strategically?
Hmm.
I've mentored for 15 years Greg Reed, still do. And while as I'm mentoring in areas that I have experience and expertise and wisdom, I'm learning from him. So this library is a building in the back of my property. Always wanted to have a library. I have a library, not to show off books, but to read.
Right.
From old books, Carl Sandburg's book on Lincoln, which is signed by Carl Sandburg,
Wow. Yeah.
to books of people that I've mentored, and they've written those books. So I'm touched, blessed, and in deep appreciation and gratitude for all of these relations.
All our relations is really an important one, after going to years of meditation retreats on the Orcas Islands. And one of the things we will say is all our relations. And when we do our vows to the north, the south, the east, and the west in these silent retreats, those are the things that we're doing. And it is, you look at your journey through life and you look at all the people. And I was just reflecting as you were talking. About some of the people that I've been so blessed to work with as well. Larry Wilson. I was thinking about him as you were talking because that big bookcase behind you reminded me when I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he had to have a ladder to go through it and pull the book down and, and it goes on and on and on and on of the people. And one person that you probably know that has become very close to me because we've helped is Quint Studer from the Studer Group, and he's in the hospital administration business. So if you don't know him,
But I do, and
and
I
I,
did see your interview with Quint. It was very well done.
well, he is doing something quite interesting now, and I'll offline here. We'll get to that because I want to get to what you're doing. This is a good segue to the Reliant Hospital. And this is this fictional setting for the book, and I'd like you to comment on thinking and actually using a hospital as a fictional setting to teach a lesson on brand integrity. Now, we on the outsiders in don't always get to see the bowels of the ship inside of a hospital. It doesn't matter if it's Scripps or it's UCSD or it doesn't matter. But why did you choose to use this hospital as your setting? And then also on that note, second question. The whole pandemic situation, it's been a huge discussion for the last 9 months on these podcasts and how it has affected brands that have gone down, they've disappeared, right? Brands that have risen to the top, Zoom. And I could enumerate more, AMC, gone, theaters, where we're at. So what would you have to say about using this as your setting for this?
Many years ago, I wrote a book called Psyched on Service,
Mm-hmm.
Building a Total Service Mentality. This is many, many years ago. And then one of the cabinet secretaries had picked up the book or was given the book, and he read it. He was the secretary of the VA, and he said, "Get this guy in here and get him in here now." And I went in and I consulted, and then I was asked to train, to speak to and train all of the directors of the VA medical centers and their chiefs of staff
Mm-hmm.
at the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C. And of course I did. It was a great honor. I remember telling my mom, "Oh my God, I'm going to go consult with and speak for the secretary." She said, "Oh, that's wonderful, sweetheart. Who's secretary?" And so I really got to know hospitals and healthcare. And then because I didn't want to travel all over the place, I created a video-based training, and we trained many thousands within the VA medical center system, and then other hospitals who were not military medical VA government related had me come in. So I knew that environment, and I've worked in and around that. Well, I know that hospitals are known by everyone, and they often don't have the greatest reputation. Oh, the doctors might, but the hospital might. In some cases, the hospital might, and the doctors don't. In any event, everybody's had hospitals as a touch point at one point in their life. So I use this as a business novella, a background, because I love making points with short stories. I think
Mm.
people really get it. I get them emotionally involved, and they do. In my latest book, I've actually had people cry, which is interesting. I like to engage people. And when they're laughing, ha, 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 I punch them in the belly with something serious. And when they're too serious, I tickle them in the little gut and I get them open. And I like to take people on sort of a sine wave. Um, my friend Zig Ziglar taught me that years ago. And he said, Dave, it's sort of like a Reese cup. He says, it's a little bit sweet and it's a little bit salty. And so, and so Reliant Hospital it's a fictitious hospital that I wrote about in
Right.
Preventing Brand Slaughter, which made it to the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, I think because it was an engaging story with a really powerful message and a specific takeaway, how to do an audit of brand integrity. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and I remember reading the part about the hospital administrator saying, I think it was Patrick, did you hear about the virus? Is what they said, what you said, the virus. No, they didn't call it the pandemic, the virus. And they said, no, we didn't hear about the virus. I thought that was really good how you kind of wove that in there. Yes, the virus was coming. So on the second part of that question, how has this, and I know I've talked with Quint a lot offline and online um, about what the pandemic has done inside the hospitals for the morale. The challenge has been the morale and
mm,
people working inside of these facilities under extremely stressful
mm,
conditions.
mm.
Um, and obviously that morale issue then affects service, it affects brand, it affects a lot of things. So would you comment on that if you would? Because that was the part two of my question.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we know that our staff, our customers are never going to treat our patients or our clients any better than they're being treated by management and leadership.
Right.
You know that. If there is indeed a domino effect, it may not be in economics, but it sure as hell is in interpersonal relations. There's no doubt about that. Look, um, the pandemic comes down and everybody's stressed out. We offer them PPE, and we even had shortages. But who is giving them the EPPE, the emotional personal protective equipment?
Hmm.
And hospitals need to know that. Look, in the story, the Illuminated Brand, when this all comes down, they're blindsided. They're committing brand slaughter. We know about manslaughter, but they're committing brand slaughter, but it's involuntary brand slaughter. In this case, this stuff is happening upon them. And in the book, they get together and have a committee and say, listen, we've monitored how our brand lives at each touch point in interaction. But with this pandemic coming down or potentially coming down, this is involuntary brand slaughter. What could we do to make sure that we keep our brand promise, our values, congruence and integrity with all of our actions? Because if we don't plan on it, it ain't going to happen because it's going to get crazy. And in
Right.
the story, the reader learns how to do the Illuminated Brand program internally so that the reader could do it themselves. And oh, by the way, I have a division that does the Illuminated Brand for corporations or hospitals or whatever. And oh, by the way, they came up with in the book, well, what can we do to create a space, a sacred space for our doctors and nurses to sort of reboot? And they found this thing called a rejuvenation station, which is a video kiosk with noise canceling headphones. And in 8 to 10 minutes, they go from their crazy roles and goals down into their souls. And by the way, that's an invention of mine, which is in
That's,
the
well, you
marketplace
have the
today.
little kiosk. Yeah. Well, but that is also, when you think about it, to be able to take 8 minutes and go in a booth and come down to a soul level because of how you treat patients. There couldn't be anything better for brand than to allow people under extreme stresses to experience that. So congratulations for that invention, because I think it's brilliant, and it is much needed. In chapter 1, you speak about brand integrity and the state of when the hospital was in integrity with its brand. And they were confident that they were in compliance with the highest standards in healthcare. Speak with our listeners about brand integrity and why compliance is so important, because obviously the pandemic had an effect on being in compliance and brand integrity.
Well, look, integrity is everything.
Yeah.
Integrity is everything. If Greg Voisen is doing podcasts as you've been doing, I think longer than any other person I know, and if Greg is designing that podcast so that the message comes out from his guests, but Greg doesn't even care about the message from the guests. He cares about, look at me, look at me. That's brand integrity. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, brand slaughter, I should say. Brand integrity is asking questions like the first question you asked me showed me that you read the book, you give a hoot, and you want that message propagated. So all I'm suggesting is this. If a hospital talks about integrity, compassion, caring, state of the art, respect for the individual, then everything that they do in harmony with that is brand integrity. But
Right.
everything they do outside of that is brand slaughter. And so when I come into a hospital and it's dirty or it's smelly or it's hard to get in or I'm not greeted or I ask a question and I'm treated like I'm a nuisance, but that's brand slaughter. And until and unless every employee, be it a hospital or even a small organization, until they do the audit of brand integrity with a list of the brands here and the touch points there and saying, am I living this brand with this person? It's a hit or it's a yes or no.
Yeah, and
And
it's got to be amongst everybody, all the way
every
down, everybody in the organization. I'm working inside a company now, and I totally kind of I drink in the elixir of what you're saying because it's really, really important. And I hope the listeners get that, because you can't have, if you're going to align, and I know you talked about culture in one of your videos. You said, I'm so tired of people talking about culture. And I agree with you, but importantly, on the other hand, it's about the relationship with the people, and in your chapter where the hospital staff were talking about the new virus. They also talked about the positive power of negative thinking and the 3-step process to handle the negatives as face it, follow it, fix it. That is one of your, you've had that for quite a while. Can you discuss the 3-step process with the audience and how it relates to the positive power of negative thinking?
yeah. So as you know, many years ago, Wiley published a book I wrote called Illuminate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's harnessing the positive power of negative thinking. People are like, you're a positive guy. Why are you reading negative thinking? It's because I've read all the positive mental attitude literature and I've
Mm-hmm.
shared the platform. Nowhere Nowhere in positive mental attitude literature does it say ignore negative issues.
Right.
Nowhere. You know, one time you and I were talking about melanomas and having them cut off. Well, if I see like potentially a melanoma, well, I'm just going to put a band-aid over it. I'm going to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. No, we say accentuate the positive where things are great. Yay. And don't eliminate the negative, illuminate the negative.
Mm-hmm.
You can't solve everything you face, but you can't solve anything unless you face it. And then I teach face it, follow it, and fix it. And when I look at the client work that I've done over the last, this is my 41st year in
Mm-hmm.
my consulting business. Um, when I look at the clients who were most effective, they were the ones who not only celebrated the successes, but they were willing to look at the issues that may be holding them back, face them, and then follow them. Where are they coming from? What's holding them in place now? And what happens, follow it out into the future if we don't mitigate it. And then you engage upon the process of fixing it, which is to eliminate or minimize the power. That's the face it, follow it, and fix it. And I've done this in so many industries. I did it yesterday in a strategic planning session in Central California here. Been doing it forever. I know the model. And for the viewers and listeners, what aren't you facing in your business or in your life? I was challenged on Oprah Radio one time. Does this apply to the family? And it does. What is it that you may be missing? You don't know, so think about it. That if you faced it, which you may be suppressing, or you may be putting under the carpet, that if you to face it and allow and follow it and fix it, man, I'm telling you, sometimes these issues or challenges are like a vampire. They evaporate in the light of day.
Yeah, what happens is the weight is lifted off of your shoulders. You almost feel that. I watched a thing, I'd never seen it before, but Dr. Phil House Calls. And he went to a family that was dealing with an overdose drug of one of the children of a mixed marriage. And everybody was blaming everybody else. And I thought it was really fascinating because he showed the cameras in there and what he was doing. And it was very revealing for kind of a show like that. But whether it was played up to the camera or not, in the end, you really saw that this family was relieved by being able to talk through the issues of the death of the son and get through it. And I thought you want to talk about illuminating. It was like the last scene was on a boat where they're all together kind of hugging and talking about the young man who had committed, because they were blaming one another, right? And frequently that happens. And
Never
being a
my
psycho,
fault.
huh? Yeah.
It's never my fault.
Right, right.
It's never, and there's nothing wrong with me, but I can sure see everything that's wrong with you. You know, as a consultant and as a mentor, that is huge because mentors and consultants are so focused on scanning and reviewing the issues, the lives, etc., of their client. They sometimes forget that they have a mirror. They have a
Yeah.
mirror, and
I used to have a friend that used to say, you're pointing one finger out, two fingers are pointing back, right? He used to say that to me. And it's, there's such simple little statements or comments that people can make that really make a big impact. I mean, you were talking about Zig Ziglar, and I never forget what I used to go to all of his events because I was definitely involved in marketing and sales. And he says, it's not your aptitude that determines your altitude, it's your attitude. And I'll never forget that. Like, I still use it today. And I think it is still so very, very important,
because it's immutable. You
Yeah.
know, Zig used to say to me, Dave, you imitate me better than I do.
You
And we
do.
did it.
You
We did a
do.
test once. We did a test. He used to call his wife sugar darling.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
had his wife turn around
Yeah.
and we both took turns to see if she could determine who it was. So she turned around and I went, hi, sugar darling. And he did the same. So she turned around and she says, well, Dave, you came in second, and that's good.
It's so true. Now, in this book, which we're going to put a link to Amazon, you speak about the Illuminated Brand program in your chapter 3 to help the hospital face the virus issue. Regardless if it's virus or whatever it is, in general terms, what should our listeners learn from the program that they can apply as lessons in their lives or in their business? It's every business, right? It doesn't matter if it's a hospital or whatever, but you use this setting to tell the story. It's a great setting. I have businesses right now I'm consulting that have these same problems. So if you were speaking to anybody today, what would you tell them?
Here you go. And I'm giving it away. I'm giving it away. So if you're interested, if any of this stuff has made any sense, grab a pen and a paper, because here you go. Or record this or whatever.
Or watch this video.
Or watch this video. But most importantly, get this in any way, shape, or form that you get this. And that is this. What are your, I call it IBDs? What are your intended brand descriptors? How do you want to be described? Let's say you're a leader or a manager or a supervisor or a salesperson, or you're looking at the whole business. What descriptive adjectives do you want to be described as? Those are your IBDs. It's not irritable bowel disease. It's intended
it's IBS.
Irritable bowel disease. But
syndrome.
How do you want to be described? Make that list. What is your brand promise? Well, we are, and one can only just Google it, and you'll see different brand values of many different companies. How do you want to be described? What do you want people to yell over the fence, so to speak, to their neighbor to talk about and describe you? And then with that, you look at all of the people in your life or in your business, whatever your focus is, because it really does apply to both. And you simply write down, there's prospects, there's customers, there's coworkers, there's leadership, there's vendors.
All these stakeholders, tons of them.
Yeah, all of the people that, whether they're a stakeholder in your business or not, you have some association.
Mm-hmm.
It could even be the people who office next door. Anyone that you have contact with, verbally, visually, or otherwise. And then you create this matrix. Now, there's a really cool thing on the List TV, thelisttv.com. They did a really cool show on me and on Brandslaughter. And they did a great video. There's a comedian. It's the List TV, and you look at Brandslaughter. But he shows the matrix. Here's the brand descriptors, which you can make. You could do it on Excel, or you could do it on paper. It doesn't make a difference. Just do it.
Right.
And then here's the touch points of the people. And you look at the intersection, and there's your bingo card to brand integrity. It's that really that simple. Now, in groups, I have people look and go, hey, where you have a green check mark, as the song goes, accentuate the positive.
Right.
Where you have a red X, you don't eliminate the negative. No, illuminate the negative. And then we break them up into groups. And then they describe where they're falling down. They illuminate it. Well, follow it. Why are we falling down? It could be very simple, a solution. And then we set SBIs. Write that down. SBI, strategic brand initiatives, to close the gaps, from where you are to where you want to be. And Greg, you and I know how many years ago we talked about PGA. And it wasn't Tiger Woods. It was performance gap analysis. Closing those gaps with your strategic brand initiatives. And when you do, your organization is focused on living the brand, on brand integrity. And it creates an esprit de corps and a culture of engagement, ownership, and asking ourselves, hey, are we living the brand? If so, cool. If not, what can we do? And if we don't have the resources of time or money or even know-how, we still put it on the flip chart. Let's not lose it. That's Illuminate, that's Brandslaughter, and that's their birth child, the Illuminated brand.
So if they go to your website, can they get that, or should I put a link on the blog to the list? Where is that chart? Is that chart available? You said you're giving it away.
I don't know that it's on the website. It might be. It might be on the website. I know it's on LinkedIn.
Okay, so we can find it on LinkedIn. We'll put a link to that. So because that was a great way to do it, and I know you were good friends and still are with Tony Alessandra, and his name came up in a podcast yesterday with Dr. Bob Nelson, who I'm sure you know as well. And we were talking about the platinum rule, because you're just kind of referring back to this and that. And when you look at some of the people that have influenced you, including Dr. Tony Alessandra and all of his quizzes and things that he created and things, it's phenomenal. Now, if you would, each of the chapters of the book is engaging. We got that. It's a story. It's lessons related to current situation in the country due to COVID. You talked about some of the lessons. I think the one you just shared is really good. Speak to our audience about potential brand slaughter hotspots and its effects to brand integrity.
So a hotspot would be defined as being out of integrity. Now, quite frankly, many business owners or leaders, if they knew it was a hot spot, they'd be on it, but they often don't. How many times have we called Maron? How many times have we called? I don't care whether it's a utility. I won't mention names, but I'll give you initials like AT&T, and we're put on hold, or we got someone, we go through we have to tell them our country western story about what's going on here.
Right.
And then they tell us, well, it's the wrong department. Hold, I'll connect you to the right department. And you go, are you kidding? And then we get disconnected. Yeah. How many executives audit that process?
Yeah.
Actually call and so they don't even know that brand slaughter is rampant
in their organization.
And they don't know it. And in my opinion, they should be convicted of brand slaughter in the second degree.
So this ABI, you call it ABI in the book, and it's Audit of Brand Integrity.
Yeah.
Discuss that some of the tools, techniques, and practices for our listeners, because ABI, look, everybody should be doing this, but they're not. The point of the book is I give you these tools, I give you these lessons, now apply them. And as you said, accentuate the negative and let's fix it. Right. So, I mean, if you really brought it down to it, it's let's fix the negative.
So, yeah, doing as they call it in my client companies in real life. And as they call it in my fictional hospitals, Reliant, in preventing brand slaughter, and in the Illuminated Brand, they call it the Abbey. We're going to do the Abbey.
ABI.
Audit of Brand Integrity, do the Abbey, where everyone goes around with a very sophisticated device called a yellow pad. and this very high-tech thing called a pen. And they have their diary of touch points, and they audit in their mind, hey, am I doing it? Am I not doing it? It's not Greg playing audit brand police. Pull it over. I'm Greg Voisen. I'm the sergeant of brand integrity here. I got a notification that you kind of screwed up over there. What do you have? No, you do this yourself. And the reason you do it yourself, and this is interesting.
It's almost like undercover boss when you think about it, but not going undercover.
But you're your own undercover boss.
Yeah, exactly.
You're good at this because you have more experience under your own covers every night. Why can't you do it? You don't need somebody else to do it. But I've had clients tell me that when they keep their peripheral you know about the reticular activator system in the
Oh
back
yeah.
of the brain.
Yeah.
You open up the filters to like a red Subaru. You never see one, but then your neighbor gets one and you see them all over the place. Well, when you open up your peripheral vision to, am I living the brand descriptor? Am I earning the descriptors? Am I living the brand? When you do that, people seek and you shall find, right? You open the filter and you go, you'll either go, holy moly, that was cool, yay, or you go, holy crapoli, I'm going to change that. But I don't know exactly how best to handle that because that might be a policy issue. But I'm going to write it down because it's brand slaughter. And I'm going to talk with someone in the organization because we're all engaged in audits of brand integrity. So the culture is celebrate the success and let's celebrate that we found an area that we're not really doing it. And that's a celebration. Look, when we found out many years ago that we had breast cancer, was that good news or bad news? Well, I'll tell you, it was painful news, but it was good news with regard to if we didn't know about it, she wouldn't be alive today. We couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have dealt with it, you see?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a health nut, you know. You talked about we should be, but we're not. I mean, I sat down at breakfast this morning with the top executive of a healthcare in company, and I took out my my monk fruit maple syrup
Mm-hmm.
and my big bag of supplements, and he ordered bacon and nitrates and blah 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 blah. And
Yeah.
I'm not making judgments, but what I'm saying is I have illuminated years ago. You knew me when I was 50 pounds heavier.
Yeah, I
And when
did actually.
I
Yeah.
faced that I was obese, I followed it. When I become a grandfather, I won't be alive or at least mobile or flexible, and I fixed it. That does take courage and discipline, but most executives don't at least even audit their brand's integrity, and they allow for those calls to happen, or they allow for the front receptionist who is the ambassador of first impression to either ignore them or be on a phone and not even look up. I mean, that's brand slaughter, and it's such an easy fix.
Well, and much of this is, being a psychotherapist, it's I don't care if it's Tiny Habits or BJ Fogg. It's really about, and in your case, everywhere, it's about new habits that have to be formed to keep consistency and the integrity. And I love the fact that it's all just done one step at a time. So when you do illuminate the negative, and like in your case, you said you were 50 pounds overweight. I've always carried a little bit extra weight, but I'm now down. And the reality is, those little habits about what you're putting in your mouth. It's a very simple formula. Everybody make this real complicated. Calories in versus calories burnt. And I know there's a lot of controversy about all this, but the reality is I've had enough people who help people lose weight, and in your case, it's doing it at giving them advice. And the advice can be very simple, just like you just said. Now, in chapter 13, you state that the kindest touch and the compassionate care are two very important components in branding. And because of the pandemic, these were usually overlooked. And I would agree with you. I had a brother pass away during the pandemic at Scripps, and you couldn't get in. He didn't have COVID, but it was so tightly restricted, it was tough. What advice would you give to those on the front line under the most pressure about kindness and compassion, coming from David Corbin with a little bit of influence from the Dalai Lama? Because the reality is, if we follow the Dalai Lama, we would all be compassionate, kind, and understanding. And I love listening to them. And I just wish the rest of the world would understand the message that he's trying to convey.
Well, let me say this to you, Greg.
Yes.
I am Swami Corbinanda. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachitananda Murtaye.
uh,
Um, we can't um, we can't give away what we don't have. We can't give away what we don't have. So if we don't show love, kindness, and compassion to ourselves, we can't give it away. We could fake it, not fake it till you make it. I think it's more fake it till you break it. Because if you fake it, you're gonna break. Compassion begins here.
I gotta, I
You
gotta,
mentioned, let
I
me
gotta
say,
show you something.
all
Hang
right,
on.
but I want to hasten to say this while you're looking and you're mooning the camera.
I
While
gotta
you're
show you this.
while you're mooning the camera, I want
No,
to
no,
say,
no, because she can edit that. My next interview tomorrow. Make it, don't
don't fake it.
fake it.
And I'm saying make it, don't break it.
Yeah.
Or but here's what I want to say. When we talked about health restoration,
Yeah.
which could involve releasing weight, the greatest tips, hacks, or advice that I was given is self love, is go inside and become connected with yourself.
Mhm.
Willie Baby Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true, and it shall follow as the night, the day thou canst not be false to any other. And so go inside. My mentoring clients, I mentor some pretty famous people and all. And I have them meditate for 12 to 22 minutes. I start them off at 12. They build up to 22 minutes until they go on their own for an hour. But the point is they go inside. And
Mhm.
when you go inside and you're in touch with your quadrinity, your physical self,
Emotional.
your intellectual, your emotional, and your spiritual, when you keep the emotional, the intellectual, and physical in harmony, the spiritual can steer you in the direction of greatness and equanimity and equipoise and the like. So from Swami Corbinanda, go inside. And if you're a healthcare worker, or if you're a high tech worker, or if you're a frontline, or no matter what you do, if compassion, caring, and love, which is damn good business. My buddy Steve Farber wrote that book, McGraw Hill. If that's important to you, it has to come from here before, through heart math, you could measure it coming out of here.
Yeah, it's so important that you bring this up as it relates to brand integrity and brand slaughter. Because if people saw that at the core essence, you said, I remember earlier, going from stress and then into your booth, getting to a soul level at the booth, 8 minutes. Now you're saying you're helping people meditate 12 to 24 minutes and then on to an hour. And it's that piece that you come getting out of the whirlwind, which is what you're doing inside the hospitals. You're taking healthcare workers out of a whirlwind for 8 minutes. And as my good friend John Selby used to say,
Oh yeah.
you're giving them a breather break.
And
There used to be these people would say, and in hospitals, it's very interesting. You'd walk around a hospital and see people smoking cigarettes. And I was like, how in the hell could this be happening, right? These people are out on a break and they're walking around the building smoking a cigarette. And they're healthcare workers. And I'm sitting here going, this is true, people.
I worked with a company for 3 years. They paid me lots of money to do what I used to call the marketing mentality for the healthcare professional. And I set them up for a program that I won't tell you the name of the company, but rhymes with Schmeiser Permanente. And then they did a program called Thrive.
Yeah.
And I told them, don't do that program unless you have a face of thriving healthcare workers.
Yeah.
Because if they're not thriving and you're talking about thrive, that's brand slaughter.
Yeah.
And that was when I wrote the book, Preventing Brand Slaughter.
Well, very good correlation. But again, you've linked all these together for us, which I think is really good for the listener. Obviously, we're going to tell them to go out and get the book. By the time this airs, the book will be up on Amazon. So let's wrap this up, Dave. If you were to leave the listeners with one or two single points that you'd like to have them take away from the book, what would it be, and how can they integrate this advice for both themselves and for the organizations in which they're running or working for? So in other words, if I'm a CEO, great. If I'm a midline manager, great. If I'm down in the bowels of the ship and I'm the nurse on the front line, what advice would you like to leave them with about the Illuminated brand? Because they are the brand. Every one of those people I just mentioned, because I watched your video, they are the brand.
Yeah, so here it is. Get ready, editors. Wake the F up. Wake the F up. If you're not effing up your business, you're effing up your business. Let me explain. Face it, follow it, and fix it. Wake the F's up. Face it, follow it, and fix it. Face the fact that you have a brand and a brand reputation, whether it's on purpose or not. You have a brand and you have brand descriptors. Wake the F up. Face those brand descriptors, then follow them. Are they a good witch or a bad witch? And follow them as to why they're good and follow them as to why they're suboptimal. And then set the SBIs, the strategic brand initiatives, close the gaps, and fix it. Wake the F up.
Great advice. So you all in that, you got 3 points of advice in there, which was perfect. And I didn't set that question up, but you answered it fantastically. Well, David, thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth, sharing some of your wisdom and insights about an illuminated brand, brand slaughter, the ABI, and the face it, and then follow it, and then fix it. You know, so kudos, namaste to you. Thanks for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.